can stop.
We can stop?
After the check, it's
Okay, let us do.
thank you. الدفور قنابي
Yeah, I'm waiting for this. Miss Oksana.
Oksana Leila.
Good morning. Let me begin by welcoming you all to this session on women and girls. And I would like to express my appreciation for the presence of our four distinguished speakers to be with us here at the stage. But let me introduce myself first. My name is Hassan Glib. I'm the Ambassador, Permanent Representative of Indonesia to the United Nations, WTO, and other international organizations in Geneva. Prior to it, I was a Deputy Foreign Minister and as Ambassador to the United Nations in New York. But let me take this opportunity, because this is my first time to take this microphone. I would like to express greatly our appreciations to the co-chair of the Global Forum for taking the initiative of having this workshop, as well as to organizing of the ODI. And let me personally also extend my gratitude to the government of Morocco for the very well-known hospitalities extended to our delegation. Thank you very much. We are going to discuss the contributions, challenges, opportunities of female migrants, whether both in high skill as well as low skill jobs. And we are going to see the possibility or the nexus, the linkage between migrations and SDGs related goals, particularly SDGs goal number 5 on gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls. But before I give, we are going to have, in accordance to the program, we are going to have around 2 hours with the Q&A and others, so I will give them all enough time to express themselves, and then of course to open the interactive dialogue. But before it, let me say a few words on my own before I give it the floor to the prominent leaders on the issue, as well as just to share with you briefly on what Indonesia experience is. So I will not come back on Indonesia anymore. First is, we know that this day more women are migrating on their own account rather than as dependent family members. In accordance with IOM data, and of course I think taken from UNDESA, in 2017, numbers of international migrants reached up to 257.7 million. And women make up 48.4%. So that's mean around 125 million female migrants. In some countries, even women migrants higher than 50%, particularly in Europe. From 78 million, 52.3% are women. Female migrants, especially low-skilled jobs, unfortunately, are still facing discrimination based on sex and genders. They sometimes receive lower wage than do men, The payment are sometimes delayed, or to some cases, the payment are only given prior to departure. But as well, some cases experience no payment at all of their wages. And female migrants are more vulnerable and I think at higher risk of being facing with exploitative treatment, sexual abuse, and physical violence, particularly in the sectors where women predominate, such as in domestic works, live-in care, as well as to some form of entertainment sectors. As for Indonesia itself, 6.5 million Indonesians working abroad, predominantly women and working in informal sectors. We have identified so many challenges and problems, particularly like terrible working condition, underpayment, physical abuse, sexual assault, and recently more and more of human trafficking that facing the migrants, female migrants of Indonesia. The government has taken a lot of things to be taken care of it. Domestically, we established integrated national task force that to enhance preventions, early detections, and immediate response in the cases if there is any violations of rights of Indonesian migrant workers. And secondly, like the Philippines, I just heard just now that we also established one citizen service in more than 20 Indonesian missions abroad, particularly in Middle East and Asia, to protect our migrants, as well as to provide consular services, legal assistance, shelter, and healthcare services. Bilaterally, we have a bilateral arrangement with various countries of destination, whereas Indonesian, the numbers of our migrants is significant, and globally, we participate actively, but this is the thing that I would like to risk here as well, and I hope to be supported by all, that we continue to encourage countries to become a state party to the International Convention on the Protections of the Rights of All Migrant Workers and Their Families of 1990, entry into force 2003, but unfortunately, until January 2018, only 51 state parties has been ratified and 15 signed. So I think if countries could also take some step to consider possibility of becoming party will be great. So SDGs 5 underline the importance of migrant workers, migration. Migration is always could be contribute to sustainable developments. And this day we are going to talk, today we are going to talk particularly 5.1 and 5.2, target point 1, end all form of discrimination, and 5.2 is end all form of violence. So, distinguished colleagues, let us turn to our panelists. But I would like to put some possible guiding question, if you can answer or later on. What are the existing challenges that female migrant and how to address it? What further step could be taken to end the discriminations and to end the violence against women and girls? And how migration could contribute greatly to the attainment of the SDGs? So now I would like to invite our four distinguished speakers. I would like just to briefly on who they are. First, I would like to go through the agenda. First is Ms. Oksana Paduraru. She is the first secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and European Integrations of the Republic of Moldova. She was posted before as a second secretary within the Moldova mission to the EU in Brussels. And Ms. Paduraru has been a part of monitoring and coordinating process of implementation of the EU-Moldova Mobility Partnership and EU-Moldova Visa Liberalization Dialogue. The second one is Dr. Jenna Henenbry, Director of International Migration Research Center, Associate Professor at Balsili School of International Affairs. She has been consultant of UN agency like UN Women, and also IOM. Dr. Henderbree has carried out impactful research on labor migrations and migrant workers in countries like, so many countries like here in Morocco as well. She has been invited expert. I think I met with you in various occasions, particularly in the UN Committee on Migration Workers or the Global Forum for Migration, as well as at the DCM. And the third one is Dr. Ayman Zohri. He is the founding president and president of the Egyptian Society for Migration Studies. Dr. Zohri is the chair of the Scientific Panel on Migrations, Union for African Population Studies. His current research interests include internal migration, urbanization, labor migration, and other relevant issues. And last but not least is Mr. Ayman Zaidi, currently a project manager at UN Women, working on access to judicial service for women and girls. He is also an international affairs professional with expertise focused on human rights at the Middle East and North Africa region. So I would like, without further ado, I would like to invite first and give the floor to the first speaker, Mrs. Oksana Padu-Rado. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, first of all, to the organizers, to the GFMD support unit for inviting Moldova to be part of this important workshop. I think I will start with an inspiring quote of Mandela, being inspired by the surrounding pictures of a room I had in the hotel, in the beautiful hotel. And it says about the impossibility, or that it always seems impossible until it's done. And I think now it's the moment when we are having all of these papers, draft, contributions. We are preparing our inputs for our capital, for those who are attending all of this negotiations process, being it Global Compact on migration, being it Global Compact on refugees. And I think now the ingredients that we need is dedication, passion, and probably vision. We have to be visionary in order to address the current challenges. When thinking about how better to shape these inputs of this introduction to this session, I was recollecting one of event that I attended during my mission in Brussels. It was EU Day at that time, and it was in the European Parliament, and kind of a contest, and in the end they were offering a bag with some key messages on that bag, and the outline message was about how we can empower women, how we can support women, and how we can address the current challenges. It was about the migration crisis at that time, and there were lots of discussions on how we can, each of the country, how can contribute and how can address it. So I was thinking about this picture, and it came to my mind about the important elements as skills, qualifications, how you adjust this in your country, how you co-report to the national policies, because not all of the documents that we are having now, we are assessing now, fit properly in our legal framework that each of our countries are having. So I will, I presented some data, let's say, that probably that will give us a little bit of food for thought about the 48% of international migrants worldwide are female, about the percentage of asylum applicants being children. And here comes another question I had in mind. When we talk about women migrants and children, do we also have to address, when we talk about migrants, women and girls, do we also need to include as well children here, considering this percentage that we have from the European Commission report, and also current Eurobarometer from April this year on the importance of integration of migrants, on the importance to keep an eye on the children left behind in the country of origin. When both parents or one of the parents is migrating, there is an effect of children left behind. When they are refugees, there are another effect. So do we also need to keep an eye or consider this, the children element? Going to another point, on the current GCM draft, I was looking in the paras that are reflecting on the male and female exploitation and the need for effective protection of children. So I was thinking, do we need probably to think more on a comprehensive approach in including more relevant information on managing migration, on the interest in child and female migrants, or maybe taking into account the greater risk and exploitation, the abuse they are putting during their path to migration. Do we also need to envisage the unskilled women migrants work in less regulated, less visible sectors than male migrants? Following on the this is the question mark I had about the children. Before getting to our experience, national experience in implementing the mobility partnership with the European Union, and as these days we are approaching the Sustainable Development Goals, I'd like to bring my country's experience. So initially, by having the Agenda 2020, we were very much relied on the GMG handbook on mainstreaming migration into development planning. That helps a lot in better shaping the national policies, in following the important objective or targets to follow at when having this long vision or long-term development strategy. Currently, we are discussing the upgrading strategy for 2030. We had some internal division of the SDGs within different working group, which involved line stakeholders. There were lots of discussions about the current challenges, but also the main recommendations from the report, which was conducted by the UNDP Moldova, planting the SDGs on the Moldovan soil. There were very relevant recommendations with targeting by 2030, like the end line. Then switching to the Moldovan experience, which we mentioned before, the mobility partnership framework. As you know, we were the first one, together with Cape Verdeum, in signing this declaration of mobility partnership and implementing. We have already 10 years of the implementation. This year is the anniversary year of mobility partnership. We have lots of experience, and each time during different forums and workshop, with each occasion we were sharing our best experience. Probably you know our relevant projects and initiatives. We give as an example, being it Nexus, as points of information for migrants before departure, when they are coming back, as informing them in order to better reintegrate in the society. Being it PARE 1+1, the creation of new businesses and the creation of new jobs for those that want to reintegrate and to coming back in the country. So I gave here just this short information because it's mentioning about the 29% of young entrepreneurs, women, if we're talking about women migrants, and showing once they are integrated, what are their possibilities to come and to contribute, not only for themselves, like using the skills they acquired abroad, but also how they are helping our country. There are also relevant to mention the analyses that exist at national level. And as we were talking from previous workshops from yesterday, the relevance of data, and I think it's important to keep using the data, to keep analyzing these data. And giving an example we have at national level is the extended migration profile, which each time it's updated and upgraded by relevant data, by analyzing these data and giving the main recommendations for our national policies. I will switch now to the GCM negotiation process and probably the draft that each of us are working on for the next round of negotiations, because I was also reflecting on what we have now, what we are discussing now, how we can make these linkages between these ongoing processes, and but also how we can adjust and balance accordingly our national capacities needed to further implement the main points from the GCM, considering also if talking about child and child sensitivities, it is also outlined in those guiding principles of the draft. We also think that partnership and dialogue should play an important role further in the continuation of when talking about management of migration and development. And as talking in parallel about the contribution of GFMD and the current draft report we are also mentioned during these days. I was wondering if we also will include the women migrants and the girls' role. Will we also outline somehow the importance of this SDGs 5 in this report as a preparation for food for thought for further discussions? So yeah, this is the questions I mentioned before. Before getting to my last comment, I would like to mention the last but not the least, the role of GFMD. It contributed a lot to my country for the development of national policies, for shaping the best initiatives which we implemented under the Mobility Partnership. I think it served and it keeps serving as a hub of ideas, of initiatives we are sharing among ourselves, and it keeps us growing ourselves, not as being a visionary, but also how we can shape our national policies in the best way. So I think it's the last point I will want to address is about the role, our role we can have in this process, the new perspective to facilitate the co-creation of ideas, innovative practices towards a migration that will benefit all actors in the society. And that maybe we can think about 3 breakthroughs that we can pick up with ourselves for the further implementation, and also why not for the 2030 goal. Thank you very much.
I wish to thank Ms. Paduraru for her brief intervention, but very important. And then I just would like to highlight, I don't want to repeat all because it's a very comprehensive one. But I just pick up one of the issues that you rightly stated, that we need to include children on the discussions of women and girls, because they are also there. And also thank you for sharing with us the experience of the Republic of Moldova on managing of migration. Thank you very much. But before I give the floor to the second speaker, Dr. Jana Hendubri, I just would like to let you know that I was informed before on the housekeeping that during the discussion, this panel, there are coffee break behind you. Then all of you can take the coffee break and bring it to your tables, but only for all of you, not the panels. This is one of the form of discrimination against us here. So I think please take up your coffee and others, and then while we are here looking for you, looking at you, and then just a little bit rather discriminate. Huh? Oh yeah, a little bit jealous. Okay, thank you very much. Now let us give the floor to Dr. Jana Hendubri, please. Maybe 7 to 8, to 10 minutes, around 10 minutes.
Too short. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. And also thank you also to my co-panelists. I'm already quite interested in hearing about what you have to say. So thank you very much. So I'm going to offer some reflections now on the intersection between gender, migration, development in the context of the Global Compact on Migration and the SDGs. In part, I'm drawing on my over 15 years of experience doing research on labor migration, but also more recently, over the last 5 years, doing work with UN Women, as well as engaged with the expert working group on women's human rights in the Global Compact. And I will draw on a few recommendations from there as well. And offer a few reflections based on the Global Compact process, because I've been participating in it and attending all of the very long meetings. So, we know that gender inequality is both a driver of migration and a continued outcome of the way in which international migration has been governed. There's actually structural drivers of migration: gender-based violence, discrimination, gender inequality, lack of financial inclusion, the gendered care economy. All those factors are some of the drivers that are gendered. But we also know that in many cases as well, the outcomes of migration itself have gendered consequences. And in some cases, we know that women's migration is a way to circumnavigate through gendered barriers to economic opportunity faced at home. But in many cases also, we know that gendered norms and expectations influence what migration pathways and resources are open to women and men. For women and men without secure livelihoods or access to education, migration opportunities are often limited, and lower skilled migrants are often slotted into gendered occupations that are characterized by low pay, and informality. For women, the opportunities and resources for migration are particularly limited or restricted. In fact, we see bilateral agreements that are channeling women specifically into feminized sectors that perpetuate gendered inequality and a number of other factors like de-skilling and devaluing of their work. So gender inequality can be perpetuated throughout the migration system, and this is something I think of interest when we think about the context of the SDGs. In the context of changing population and labor force dynamics, migrant women fill care deficits created by insufficient social protection and social care systems. So thinking about what we were talking about yesterday a little bit, but in the context of thinking about the gaps in countries of origin and destination. And so they're often responding to these social care gaps, and women migrants in the care economy are increasingly filling the care deficits that are left by a lack of affordable public care services and health sector cutbacks. So, for example, as we heard yesterday, the health workforce is increasing, the migrant workforce is increasing by 60%. We know that in Australia, estimates are that migrant workers make up more than 25% of all care workers. And in Austria and Australia, and in Israel, this figure rises to 50%, and in Italy it's 72%. And the majority of these occupations are feminized, and the majority of these migrant workers are women. In the United States, we know that the care sector is expected to grow by 70% over the next 10 years. So migrant women are contributing to economic development, not only through things such as remittances, which we often talk about, but also through their vital care labor, through their fiscal contributions they make in offsetting gaps in care systems in high and low-income countries. And migrant workers, we know, contribute more in taxes and social contributions than they receive in individual benefits. And so what this translates to for women migrant workers is that they tend to pay into employment insurance systems, but are not eligible for maternity leave, for example, or parental benefits. We know that women migrant workers contribute significantly in terms of remittances, financial remittances, and social. We know, for example, in countries such as Nepal, they contribute roughly 50% of migrant workers' remittances, or almost 30% of the GDP in that country. And a couple of important things to mention about remittances are that women tend to send home a greater proportion of their remittances, of their earnings, despite earning less than their male counterparts. They also do so in smaller amounts more frequently. And this has consequences when we talk about things like trying to lower remittance transfer costs, because for women migrant workers, what matters is actually lowering the amounts per small cost transfers as compared to just aggregate across the board. There's also the situation that many women will carry goods across borders, so they're not necessarily sending money, they're sending goods. They're taking them with them or sending goods, medicine, technology, and this is partly because they want to control how the remittances are utilized. It's documented that women migrant workers' remittances, for the most part, are spent on more human capital factors than those that are remitted by men, such as education and healthcare. However, in the case of goods that are transferred, there's difficulties in sending those goods internationally, and some countries have responded to this and recognized that this is something that women choose to do more so than men, such as the cases of Moldova, that has a partnership with the Postal Service to enable low-cost, affordable transfer of goods. And I think part of what is important to think about is overall, when we think about contributions to development, the potential development outcomes and women's economic empowerment through migration is limited by a lack of financial inclusion, is limited by issues such as access to banking, documentation, property ownership, but it's also influenced by the sort of realities of women's labor migration. We know that women are concentrated in these sectors that are characterized by a high degree of informality, risks of exploitation, and have long-term family separation, for example. And it's one of the least, and care work, for example, is one of the least regulated sectors in which women migrants work. So we know that the conditions under which women move can undermine development outcomes of migration. And so when thinking about the SDGs and the Global Compact on migration, I think it's key that we start to think more about ensuring that we have a gender-responsive approach to all of the initiatives, both small-scale and large-scale. And this is where I think the SDGs are particularly valuable towards realizing in a more practical sense what's meant by gender responsiveness. And in fact, their express focus on inequality is particularly valuable. So when we look to the SDGs, we know that we have things such as Goal 5, we have Goal 5.4, recognize the value of unpaid care and domestic work, for example. We have Goal 8, and these are the two that are quite often stated, but we also have, and in Goal 8, we have everything from decent work, Goal 8.7, eradicate forced labor, and Goal 8.8, addressing labor rights and secure working environments and decent work. But we also have Goal 10.2, 10.7, 10.4, 16.2, 17.18. All of these have relevance vis-a-vis gender and migration. And it's important to draw out the elements in which we need to have a gender-responsive approach to tackling and utilizing those frameworks. So, for example, when we think about remittance costs, thinking about having these small transfers is important. Also thinking about, when we're thinking about data and gathering of information, we need to make sure we have sex disaggregated data. Yes, but we also need to make sure we're asking questions that are informed by a gender lens that understands that the realities of migration for women are different than those of men. When we look towards the Global Compact of Migration and the Zero Draft, and the discussions that have been happening in the negotiations in the last few weeks, I'm struck by, the SDGs appear multiple times in the document. We've got Objective 19 and Objective 20, for example. But so too does gender responsiveness. In fact, it appears 15 times throughout the most recent draft. But both of these concepts, sort of sustainable development and gender responsiveness, have remained a kind of fuzzy thing that is stated on the floor by member states. It's stated sort of willy-nilly. No one's going to say they're opposed to that per se, but it's not being really sort of practically brought down in discussions. And I think that that's part of the structures of what's happening in the Global Compact. But one of the things in the negotiation structure. But when I looked through it, I was struck by things that were missing. Things like reference to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. But the much less ratified Convention on Transnational Organized Crime is obviously mentioned. So it sort of gives us a sense of the focus of where the compact was headed. There's very little about sort of operationalizing what gender responsiveness means. So no mention of gender budgeting or gender evaluations or monitoring. And this is partly due to the reticence of sort of not wanting to engage in sort of having to be held accountable, which I fully understand, particularly from a resource perspective. But I think when what we know about gender responsiveness and what we can learn from countries such as Canada, which has introduced a gender-based analysis tool to its policy frameworks, is that you need to understand the gendered realities and gendered consequences of your policies before you can then design new ones that are going to be gender responsive. And this requires ongoing research and evaluation. So it's not really about evaluation in terms of holding a state to account, but it's about evaluation in terms of allowing states to better understand how the policies they've designed may in fact be gender blind on numerous counts. In addition, I think that there's a number of other gaps that need to be addressed. Certainly tackling the drivers and sort of the way in which gender inequality is embedded in terms of migration, I think needs to be addressed. I think when we look forward towards and can learn from the SDGs into the Global Compact, I think we need to recognize the importance of data, information sharing, the need to have opportunities like the Global Forum on Migration and Development, where we can bring together civil society actors and states, not just in a race to the bottom, which is what I've been hearing criticisms about in terms of the Global Compact negotiations, but also about sharing what can work and about elevating the level of the discourse, that we need to raise the bar in terms of building expectations. But for women migrant workers, involvement of civil society is even more important, and involvement of migrant workers organizations, because they are more likely to be able to engage with and work with women migrant workers, and women tend to be more excluded from the formal opportunities for representation at such meetings. And so it's important to make sure that that's entrenched. We also need to have structural mechanisms that ensure the 3 R's of gender responsiveness, that have representation, they have resources, and access to rights. We need to make sure also, going forward, in terms of advancing the dialogue with respect to women migrants, I think I'd like to actually draw up a few things here that I think are important. That we recognize how important it's been to get gender responsiveness sort of a commonplace expression, and that gender has become much more common within the discursive ways in which it's discussed at the Global Compact. But I think we need to move towards thinking about practical implementation. And in the work that I've been doing with the expert working group on gender in the Global Compact, we've drafted recommendations for addressing women's human rights in the Global Compact, and we've also drafted Global Compact of Migration gender guidance notes. And these are circulated and will be circulated at the next Global Compact meetings. And they're kind of a how-to of gender responsiveness. They're also available online through empowerwomen.org, so I urge you to check them out. And hope very much that we can work to enable a global compact on migration that isn't just in passing gender responsiveness, but is much more realized practically and materialized practically, and hopefully we can raise the bar so that we're in practice and not just in rhetoric. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. Thank you very much to raise so many important issues, including highlight the contributions of migrant workers to country of origin as well as country of destination on social and economic development. And I think I share with you that the importance of SDGs, not only Goal 5, but also various goals that relate to migration and to decent works and others. But also on the GCM deliberation, the importance of the involvement of the CSO as well as our Migrant Worker Association. I think this is one of the issues that need to be followed up, the importance of their involvement in the GCM. Thank you very much indeed. And highlighted also the gender responsiveness is always be there. Thank you very much. And now let us, I would like to invite Dr. Ayman Zohri to the floor, please.
Hello. First of all, in fact, I prepared my PowerPoint presentation for this very short presentation in English, though I will speak in Arabic. في الحقيقة هناك طلب مني الحديث عن 5 نقاط محددة خاصة بهجرة النساء والفتيات، إلا أني أعتقد أنني سأستطيع تغطية البنود الثلاثة التي أشار إليها سيادة السفير كليب، وهي التحديات والتدابير والعلاقة والتدابير الخاصة بالوقوف أمام هذه التحديات، بالإضافة إلى العلاقة بينها وبين أهداف التنمية المستدامة للعام 2030. أولا ربما أعيد ما قاله سيادة السفير في بداية الحديث، وهو اللمحة الإحصائية التي أشار إليها، وهي أن نسبة النساء من الهجرة الدولية في الحقيقة هي ثابتة أو تتراوح بين دائما حول 48% من الهجرة الدولية، إلا أنه مع ازدياد أعداد المهاجرين الدوليين يمكن أن نلاحظ ازديادا أيضا في أعداد النساء المهاجرات، إلى أن وصلنا في العام 2017 إلى الرقم الموضح أمام حضراتكم قرابة 125 مليونا. في الحقيقة هذا الرقم يماثل سكان دولة كبيرة كالمكسيك أو دولة كبيرة اليابان، ويمثل في الحقيقة ضعف سكان المملكة المتحدة على سبيل المثال، فهو رقم ضخم إذا قدرناه مقارنة بحجم دول كبيرة مثل التي ذكرتها. فالنقطة الثانية وهي العلاقة بين جندرة الهجرة أو النوع الاجتماعي في الهجرة، ولماذا النساء أكثر عرضة للانتهاكات أثناء هجرتهن الدولية. في الحقيقة عند الحديث عن لماذا هن أكثر هشاشة أو أكثر عرضة الانتهاكات التي يمكن أن تحدث خلال الهجرة، في الحقيقة هذا يبدأ مع بداية التفكير في الهجرة. عادة النساء لا يكون لديهن القدر الكافي من المعلومات أو الإتاحة المعلوماتية مقارنة بالرجال، فلا يعرفن أسواق العمل بشكل أكبر، ربما لقصور البحث أو شيء من هذا القبيل. والنقطة الثانية أيضا أن هجرة النساء تتركز في مهن محددة، فهو السوق ليس مفتوح بشكل كبير أمام النساء مقارنة بالرجال، وهذا يضعهن في الحقيقة في مشكلات أكثر، لأن عادة يعملن في مجال الخدمات والخدمات المنزلية خصوصا، فيكون بعيدا ربما عن حتى الرقابة الوطنية الخاصة بأسواق العمل. هناك هدر أيضا في الكفاءة بالنسبة للإناث، ونلاحظ ذلك أن هناك العديد من العاملات في المنازل والعاملات في قطاع الخدمة المنزلية أو الخدمة عموما هن حاصلات على مؤهلات عليا، وعلى الرغم من ذلك يحدث هدر من الكفاءة، يؤدين أعمالا قد تؤديها نساء أخريات بمستويات تعليم أقل، ونلاحظ هذا في حالة الفلبين مثلا وفي حالة دول أخرى كثيرة. أيضا النساء أكثر، لا أقول أكثر ميلا، ولكن هن أكثر يعني عملا في القطاع غير الرسمي أو القطاع الاقتصادي غير المنظم للدولة، وهذا يكون عادة خارج رقابة الدولة أيضا، فيتعرضنا لمشكلات أكثر. هذا بالنسبة للنقطة الأولى، وهي لماذا يتعرضنا لمشكلات أكثر. النقطة الأخرى التي أتحدث فيها هي المبادرات القائمة للتصدي لتلك التحديات التي ذكرت بعضها على سبيل المثال. في الحقيقة هناك مبادرات عديدة وكثيرة جدا على مستوى العالم، ربما بداية من العهد الدولي لحقوق الإنسان في العام 1948 مرورا بالاتفاقية الدولية لحماية حقوق جميع العمال المهاجرين وأفراد أسرهم، اتفاقية الأمم المتحدة العام 1990، واتفاقية القضاء على جميع أشكال التمييز ضد المرأة السيداو عام 1979، واتفاقية حقوق الطفل، وبروتوكول مكافحة تهريب المهاجرين، والعديد من المبادرات الدولية التي تهدف إلى حل التعاطي مع تلك التحديات، بالإضافة إلى صكوك منظمة العمل الدولية، خاصة اتفاقية رقم 97 للعام 49 والاتفاقية 143 للعام 75. إذن هناك منظومة كاملة في الحقيقة من المبادرات الخاصة بالتصدي للتحديات التي تواجهها المرأة. هناك أتحدث الآن عن تجارب النساء العاملات في مهن الرعاية ومبادرات تحسين ظروف عملهن. كما قلت أن النساء أكثر عملا في مهن الرعاية بشكل عام على مستوى العالم، ولذلك يتعرضن للعديد من المشكلات كما ذكرت. وهناك مبادرات للتعاطي مع هذه المسألة، وربما منها لكي لا أطيل على حضراتكم اتفاقية العمالة المنزلية الخاصة بالمنظمة الدولية، منظمة العمل الدولية، اتفاقية رقم 189 للعام 2011، وتوصية منظمة العمل الدولية رقم 201 للعام 2011 ربما تكون أمثلة موضحة لمدى اهتمام العالم بهذا الموضوع. إذا انتقلنا لأثر الهجرة في تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة، في الحقيقة يعني كما ذكرت السيدة جيني منذ قليل أن الموضوع ليس مرتبط فقط بالهدف رقم 5 وهو الرقم الكبير الخاص بالنساء، ولكن هناك أهداف كثيرة أخرى من أهداف التنمية المستدامة تعاملت وتعاطت مع هذا الموضوع. لكن ربما نميل كثيرا إلى نسب العلاقة بين هجرة المرأة وأهداف التنمية المستدامة إلى الهدف رقم 5، وخاصة الغاية رقم 5.2 التي تتحدث عن تحديدا عن موضوع الاتجار في البشر وخصوصا النساء والأطفال، لأنه في الحقيقة إذا سلبت الحرية من المرأة أو من الرجل لا يمكن أن نعول على أفعالهم بعد ذلك كأفعال إيجابية قد تسهم في تحقيق تنمية على الإطلاق. لذلك يجب التعاطي أولا مع مشكلة الاتجار في النساء والفتيات قبل الحديث عن أي علاقة بين الهجرة والتنمية خصوصا بالنسبة للمرأة. بعض التوصيات المستقبلية في عجالة شديدة. هناك في الحقيقة العديد من كما ذكرت هناك العديد من المبادرات الدولية، وكما ذكرت أيضا بدأت هذه المبادرات منذ وقت كبير جدا من أكثر من 60 سنة، ولكن المشكل دائما هو في التطبيق، المشكل دائما هو في التحفظات التي تضعها الدول على بعض البنود الخاصة بالاتفاقيات الدولية، وفي الحقيقة لا تعاود التفكير في رفع هذه التحفظات على الرغم من مرور سنوات عديدة وتغير ربما الظروف الاقتصادية والاجتماعية في هذه الدول، ولكنها تحتفظ بهذه التحفظات. ربما مثال على ذلك التحفظات التي وضعتها دول عديدة على اتفاقية السيداو لدرجة أنها أخرجتها من محتواها بشكل ربما كامل. أيضا المشكلة الأخرى هو تأخر بدء نفاذ الاتفاقيات الدولية لعدم مصادقة العديد من الدول عليها. فربما الاتفاقية الهامة في مجال حماية حقوق العمال والمهاجرين صدرت في العام 1990 ودخلت حيز النفاذ بعدها بأكثر من 10 سنوات، هذا على سبيل المثال. النقطة الهامة الأخرى أنه يجب أن ندعم التعاون الدولي والشراكات المحلية والإقليمية الخاصة بتفعيل هذه الاتفاقيات. النقطة الأخيرة هي أهمية منظمات المجتمع المدني ومنظمات المهاجرين في تحقيق هذه الأهداف وفي ربط العلاقة بين هجرة النساء والتنمية، لأنه بدون منظمات المجتمع المدني لا يمكن تحقيق هذه الأهداف، وخاصة أن إدماج منظمات المجتمع المدني أو إشراك منظمات المجتمع المدني في العديد من الدول وخاصة دول الجنوب يتم بشكل صوري لتجميل الصورة أمام العالم وليس بشكل حقيقي. شكرا لحضراتكم.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zohri. Thank you very much for raising so many important issues about the vulnerability of female migrant, and you raised the gap of the access to information, particularly at the sectors of domestic works, and for raising up the way ahead, including the full implementations of the legal frameworks, deals with the convention and others. And also you just also raised the importance, role and participations of the CSO in the SDGs attainment. Thank you so much. And now let us have the last but not least, Mr. Ayman Saidi. You have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I'm going to add to this roller coaster of languages and speak in French. Mesdames et messieurs les représentants du gouvernement, de la société civile, mesdames et messieurs les collègues des agences des Nations Unies au Maroc, Excellences, mesdames, messieurs, c'est un grand honneur pour moi de m'exprimer aujourd'hui devant vous à l'occasion de cet atelier sous le thème de la migration pour le développement. Notre conférence d'aujourd'hui revêt une signification et résonance particulière au regard de l'état du monde dans lequel nous nous trouvons. Aujourd'hui, dans le monde entier, les gens sont en mouvement. Ils émigrent pour échapper à la pauvreté, améliorer leurs moyens d'existence et leurs opportunités, ou pour échapper aux conflits et à la dévastation dans leur propre pays. Nous l'avons dit aujourd'hui et aussi hier, entre 2000 et 2015, le nombre de migrants internationaux a atteint 244 millions. Près de la moitié d'entre eux sont des femmes. Les femmes représentent également la moitié des 19,6 millions de réfugiés dans le monde. Et bien que les femmes représentent 48% des migrants internationaux, le discours, l'élaboration de politiques, les programmes et des projets sur la migration ont tendance à négliger les perspectives de genre. Lorsque les droits des femmes migrantes sont protégés, la migration peut être dynamisante, avec un impact positif sur leur position dans leur famille et dans leur communauté. Cependant, les femmes sont confrontées à des risques élevés de violences sexuelles et sexistes, de stress et de traumatismes psychosociaux, de complications de santé et d'exploitation. Les femmes migrantes sont généralement aussi soumises à des formes multiples et croisées de discrimination. En tant que femmes migrantes, et souvent pour des motifs supplémentaires, tels que la race, l'ethnicité ou l'appartenance à un groupe minoritaire. Une telle discrimination fondée sur le genre limite la capacité des femmes à prendre des décisions, à agir au sein du ménage et sur le marché du travail, limite leur mobilité ainsi que leurs possibilités économiques. Cet atelier, en préparation de la conférence internationale sur la migration, est une occasion historique d'adopter une vision stratégique et équilibrée des besoins des millions de femmes migrantes qui alimentent discrètement les économies et soutiennent la croissance. Excellences, mesdames, messieurs, afin de définir des politiques nationales en harmonie avec les normes internationales, énonçant les droits à l'égalité de traitement et à la non-discrimination, et qui protègent spécifiquement les droits et les besoins des femmes, nous nous devons d'être mieux informés. Car l'absence de données ventilées par sexe est l'un des aspects de ce contrôle qui doit être corrigé. Nous l'avons dit, mes collègues panélistes l'ont mentionné, conformément à la cible 17.18, la collecte de données ventilées par sexe, âge et statut migratoire est essentielle pour protéger les droits humains des femmes et des filles migrantes, garantir l'accès à la santé, à l'éducation, à l'emploi. Un grand nombre de femmes et de filles sont confrontées à la discrimination, à la violence, à l'exploitation à différents stades du cycle migratoire. Avec des bases de données factuelles renforcées, les politiques publiques peuvent être mieux ciblées pour s'attaquer aux vulnérabilités spécifiques des femmes et des filles. Après tout, la migration peut être un processus d'autonomisation si les droits de l'homme et du travail des migrants sont protégés. Une migration sûre, ordonnée et régulière peut permettre aux femmes et aux hommes de développer de nouvelles compétences, de gagner des salaires plus élevés que dans leur pays d'origine, de s'épanouir en tant qu'entrepreneurs et de contribuer de manière importante à la croissance de l'économie. De même, la migration peut accroître leur accès à l'éducation et aux opportunités économiques, ainsi que perturber les normes et les attentes sexo-spécifiques nuisibles et améliorer leur statut social et politique. La cible 8.8, défendre les droits des travailleurs, promouvoir la sécurité sur le lieu de travail et assurer la protection de tous les travailleurs, y compris les migrants et en particulier les femmes, est extrêmement importante. Car les femmes migrantes sont confrontées à des vulnérabilités, comme on l'a dit, sexo-spécifiques sur le marché du travail. Nous avons mentionné l'exemple du secteur des soins, du care sector, un secteur très féminisé, où un grand nombre de femmes migrantes se voient parfois confisquer leur passeport ou leurs documents d'identité, sont souvent isolées dans des maisons privées. Elles travaillent souvent des heures excessives pour un salaire très bas ou pas de salaire du tout, dans le cadre de contrats de travail restrictifs, sans aucun droit à une négociation collective ou à un accès à une protection juridique, sociale et aux soins de santé. Pour l'ONU Femmes, la promotion d'un environnement migratoire sûr pour les femmes et les filles, ainsi que soutenir les pays dans l'adoption d'un cadre réglementaire harmonisé avec la CEDAW et les normes internationales en matière des droits de l'homme, est une priorité pour parvenir à une égalité effective. Depuis sa création en 2010, l'ONU Femmes a promu la CEDAW comme un outil efficace pour protéger les droits des travailleuses migrantes. Bien que les femmes constituent 44,3% des travailleurs migrants de la planète, elles représentent 73,4% des travailleurs domestiques migrants internationaux. Nous cherchons donc à promouvoir et à protéger les droits des travailleuses migrantes et améliorer la protection contre l'exclusion et l'exploitation à tous les stades de la migration. Cela se fait sur 3 niveaux. Dans un premier temps, fournir des produits de connaissance en tant qu'intrant et référence pour l'élaboration de politiques publiques en la matière. Dans un second temps, mener des activités de plaidoyer et des formations susceptibles d'aider à améliorer et à adopter les mesures et stratégies nécessaires pour assurer aux femmes migrantes un accès à l'emploi et leur autonomisation. Et finalement, améliorer le niveau d'harmonisation entre les cadres juridiques et les législations nationales concernant la migration et les instruments internationaux sur l'égalité entre les sexes, ainsi que les droits fondamentaux des femmes qui ont été ratifiés par les pays. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, nous considérons cet atelier ainsi que la conférence internationale sur la migration qui se tiendra au Maroc en fin d'année comme une opportunité importante pour le développement d'une approche globale basée sur les droits de l'homme et sensible au genre pour faire face aux grands mouvements de réfugiés et de migrants. L'égalité des sexes est un droit et la réalisation de ce droit est le meilleur moyen de surmonter certains des défis les plus urgents de notre époque. Depuis les crises économiques et l'insuffisance des soins de santé jusqu'aux effets du changement climatique, la violence à l'égard des femmes et l'intensification des conflits. D'un côté, les femmes sont plus touchées par ces problèmes, tuant environ la moitié des personnes qui vivent en dehors de leur pays d'origine. Les femmes migrantes jouent un rôle central dans la réalisation de l'ODD 5 sur la réalisation de l'égalité des sexes et l'autonomisation de toutes les femmes et filles, et mettant fin ainsi à toutes les formes de discrimination et d'inégalité dans la loi et dans la pratique, y compris dans les politiques migratoires. L'élaboration du pacte mondial offre une occasion unique de veiller à ce que les droits humains des femmes migrantes soient promus et protégés à tous les stades de la migration, dans ce qui devrait devenir le modèle de gouvernance de la migration internationale. Suite au sommet des Nations Unies pour les réfugiés et les migrants en septembre 2016, les dirigeants mondiaux ont exprimé leur volonté de veiller à ce que les réponses aux grands mouvements de migrants intègrent une perspective sexo-spécifique, promeuvent l'égalité des sexes et l'autonomisation de toutes les femmes et les filles et respectent et protègent leurs droits. Les défis auxquels s'attaquent les 17 objectifs de développement durable comportent de nombreuses et importantes perspectives de genre. Universels, inclusifs et interconnectés, ces objectifs appellent à l'action de tous. des actions et des solutions sexospécifiques sont nécessaires afin de réduire la pauvreté et l'insécurité des femmes et des filles, pour promouvoir leur accès à la croissance économique, ainsi qu'à la santé, à l'éducation et à la justice. L'instauration de l'égalité des sexes et de l'autonomisation des femmes fait partie intégrante de chacun des objectifs. Ce n'est qu'en garantissant les droits des femmes et des filles dans l'ensemble que nous parviendrons à assurer la justice et l'inclusion, à développer des économies qui bénéficient à toutes et à tous, et à préserver l'environnement que nous partageons aujourd'hui et pour les générations futures. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Thank you, Mr. Saidi, for your presentation and for your perspective, your views, and of course, your proposal on the strategy to deal with the how to address the vulnerability of women's public policy, conduct advocacy, and also one of the issues that he raised is to improve national legislation. So, dear colleagues, we have some time now. I would like to open the floor for question, observation, views, perspective. But we are going to have it until around 20-25 minutes. Then we come back to the panel to wrap up. I would like to open the floor right now, but please do to be brief, and then also inform us your name and institution that you are affiliated with. Thank you very much. First on this table, and first, I'll take three first, maybe. One on the first table, second, and okay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Hanna Simon. I'm the ambassador of Eritrea in Paris. We had very interesting interventions and very good lessons from what they shared, and thank you very much for that. I think the exploitation aspect of women's and girls' migration must be addressed more thoroughly at national, regional, and international level. We had some intervention from UN Women, and it's really lightning. I would like to focus on domestic exploitation and abuse, including sexual abuse and rapes, as well as prostitution. Domestic abuse and exploitation has become so domestic abuse and exploitation has become common in many migration situations, even for people recruited through regular channels. I know that legal means are introduced in developed countries to counter them. The case is different in the rest of the world. For illegal migrant women and girls, the only job left in order to survive is prostitution. It's not a secret that most of illegal migrants move with anti-pregnancy pills on hand because they know that probabilities of rapes are extremely high. And the worst is when they fall in the hands of organized crime. There are thousands, if not millions, to be caught in criminal networks. Once women and girls are caught in criminal networks, many end up in servitude and hard life. This situation is gaining ground internationally. I don't think this affects only women from developing countries of Africa, Latin America, and Asia. It also affects especially women from Eastern Europe. International action against such crimes need more cooperation with national and international police and security authorities such as Interpol or Europol. Raising awareness is a major step towards solution, and I think it would be beneficial for the Global Forum to include national and international police and security authorities the same way it has included the business community. These forces can share experiences and help raise awareness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Now I give the floor to the second speaker, please. Second intervention.
Merci, professeur Bécher Hamdouche, Association Migration Internationale. Je voudrais revenir sur un des aspects qui est important dans les objectifs du développement durable, l'agenda 2030, en même temps dans peut-être le pacte mondial, en tout cas dans la relation migration-développement. La première intervenante ce matin a insisté sur le rôle des transferts. Les objectifs du développement durable parlent aussi de réduire les coûts des transferts, qu'ils soient sûrs, etc. C'est très bien. Les transferts peuvent être importants dans certains pays. Au Maroc, ils sont de l'ordre de 7%, comme on a dit hier. Dans certains pays, ils peuvent atteindre, comme cela a été dit, 20-30%. Ça devient important dans le développement d'un pays. Sachant très bien une enquête qu'on avait faite, et le cas du Sénégal hier présenté l'a dit aussi, que l'essentiel de l'utilisation des transferts va vers les dépenses courantes des ménages, notamment des ménages migrants, des familles des migrants. Lors de 71, l'enquête qu'on avait faite au Maroc, 71% vont à la consommation, aux dépenses courantes, dont l'éducation, la santé, etc. C'est important. L'investissement, seulement 8%. Dépôt dans les banques, le reste, 21%. L'enjeu est dans les investissements, comment les orienter vers des objectifs du développement dans le pays, et ce qui est déposé dans les banques. Qui en profite? Au Maroc, en tout cas, ce ne sont pas les migrants eux-mêmes. Il y a des régions, il y a plus de dépôts que d'autres. Ils vont vers les autres régions, ce sont d'autres acteurs économiques qui en profitent. Là, il y a du travail dans les politiques publiques à faire. En tout cas, ce sur quoi je voudrais insister rapidement, c'est que les transferts sont des transferts privés. On les compare souvent à l'aide publique au développement, aux investissements directs. Il s'agit de transferts privés. L'État n'est pas responsable. On n'a pas de mainmise sur ces transferts. Ce sont les migrants, ça leur appartient, ils en font ce qu'ils veulent. Et c'est le cas. Donc on ne peut pas baser une politique de développement sur les transferts. La politique de développement doit utiliser les moyens publics, pas les moyens des migrants. Ils aident, on peut les inciter à aller vers certains secteurs, mais ils ne sont pas responsables du développement. Ils leur appartiennent à eux. C'est ça qui est fondamental, parce qu'on revient toujours sur ce phénomène-là. C'est le point sur lequel je voulais insister. Deuxième remarque, et je terminerai par là, l'utilisation des transferts par les hommes et les femmes n'est pas toujours la même. Ça aussi, c'est intéressant. Les hommes pensent plus, les deux s'intéressent aux dépenses courantes, mais en ce qui concerne, en dehors des dépenses courantes du ménage, les hommes et les femmes n'ont pas les mêmes utilisations. Là, il y a du travail à faire, de recherche pour comprendre ce qui se passe. Pourquoi? On sait très bien, les femmes sont plus proches de leurs enfants, des intérêts, des besoins de leur ménage que l'homme qui pense plus à l'investissement. Et quand il s'agit d'un investissement qui peut être générateur de ressources. Là, c'est intéressant de voir les deux. Et là, il y a du travail à faire. Je crois que ça n'a jamais été fait, ou à ma connaissance en tout cas, pas beaucoup. Il faudrait peut-être creuser et voir, puisqu'on parle des femmes et des filles dans cet atelier, il faudrait peut-être creuser cet aspect. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the first time that we receive as well the remittance issues. So now the third one is, yes, please.
Bonjour, Abdelkader Ftouhi de l'association marocaine d'appui à la petite entreprise. Bon, par rapport à l'enjeu d'autonomisation des femmes et des filles, bon, pour répondre à cet enjeu, ça nous pousse à poser quelques questions. C'est comment rendre les femmes et les filles plus attractives pour le marché du travail et comment promouvoir et mettre en place des dispositifs intégrés pour favoriser la création des petits projets et des activités génératrices de revenus. Je pense que d'après les expériences au Maroc, pour avec les migrantes qui se lancent dans l'entrepreneuriat. C'est vrai, il y a un accompagnement, tout ce qui concerne l'appui pour les études de faisabilité de leurs initiatives, mais le problème de financement reste posé, et surtout pour la pérennisation des initiatives installées. Donc, ça, c'est une... Et pour la promotion de toutes ces initiatives d'autonomisation, je pense que c'est l'affaire de tout le monde. C'est l'affaire, c'est vrai, des acteurs institutionnels, de la société civile, aussi de la coopération internationale. Mais je pense qu'il faudrait avoir des stratégies à moyen et à long terme pour pérenniser ces initiatives. Parce que on peut avoir des projets qui lancent des initiatives, mais il faut se poser toujours la pérennisation de ces programmes. Et par conséquent, au niveau national, peut-être il faudrait envisager des dispositifs intégrés spécifiques, aussi bien pour les services financiers et pour les services non financiers, c'est-à-dire le financement particulièrement, il constitue une contrainte majeure aussi bien pour la création que pour le renforcement de ce genre d'initiative. Et merci.
Thank you very much. Since we have already 3, but since most of them are more on observations and their perspective, not too clear on the question. So I would like to continue, because if it is agreeable to all. So I would like to continue with the receiving observation, comment. Please.
Thank you very much. Jason Gagnon from the OECD Development Center. Just a few reflections and comments on what's been said, and hopefully also pose a few questions, and so that the discussion moves forward. The first is, I think it's important to think about what we should expect on the future of migration undertaken by women. The very first point is unpacking the 244 million figure that's been given, and that figure is based on stocks. And if we're concerned with migration flows, or if we're concerned with policy concerned with flows, then we need obviously migration data on flows, and there's a number of reasons why that data is difficult to collect. Many countries already don't collect it, or at least don't collect it very regularly. The flows are often through informal channels, so it's easier to collect stocks because of that. And the last point is that the flow data is mostly useful when it's in contemporaneous time, which necessitates standardization, which is what we do at the OECD. But that we're very far away from that, I think, because we already have discussions that are not at the end on the definition of migrants and on the definition of stocks to start off with. So unpacking the 50-50 figure already, on women, on the 50-50 of the 244 million, women already represent a minority in labor migration. So labor migrants are mostly men. The figures are 84 million versus 66 million. Women largely continue to be dominant in family migration routes through reunification and marriage migration. And I don't have the figures in front of me right now, but the figures are very different, something like 80-20. It's also important to think about how this might evolve when discussing policy for the future. Female employment rates are remarkably low in many countries. They're hovering around 20%, whereas men might be 60 to 70%. And it's been trending upwards in a lot of these countries. So what does this mean for the future of female migration? Does it mean that those women are going to find jobs at home, or is it going to actually increase immigration? Another way to unpack the 50-50 discussion on the migrant stocks is to look across countries, and it varies greatly. In our work at the Development Center, we found that there were more men, for instance, in the South-South context. This is specifically in the South-South context. There were more men immigrating, for instance, from Mali and Burkina to Côte d'Ivoire. There were more men emigrating from Haiti to Dominican Republic. But there are large indications that the South-South migration rising in South America and Latin America is primarily female. And that is quite interesting to think about in the policy context. On inequality and on opportunities for women, people tend to vote with their feet, and we can expect that as the middle class grows, for example, in Sub-Saharan Africa, we may we may increasingly see the case of women migrating, and that's based on work that we've done on, the Development Center has an indicator on the measure of gender norms, informal gender norms, and we found in general across the entire world that where gender norms were worse, you saw that women were migrating from those countries to countries where the norms were more easier for them to get jobs, easier for them to migrate to start off with, and so on and so forth. The second point I wanted to make was on how to empower women as economic agents for the links between migration and development. And I alluded to this earlier this morning when I spoke. There's lots of focus on migration and development. It's focused mostly on migration policies and on policies that explicitly try to link migration and development. But women, for instance, there's two ways here I'd like to point this out, that public policies that don't explicitly look at migration might impact on the links between migration and gender. First, as women as agents when they're not migrants, but they have a migrant in the household, so those that are left in the home country, sometimes they are pushed further into poverty, and that's because lots of the focus has been on how women use remittances differently, and a lot of that discussion is missing one of the major points, which is if women don't have access to land, or if they don't have access to certain types of training, or if something limits the economic contribution they may make with remittances, well, then you're going to obviously see a different use of remittances. So there's definitely a lever there to be playing with, and I think the policy should focus more on these types of public policies. And this is somewhat of a direct answer to what Bashir was saying earlier. I think we're beyond the discussion on whether remittances are private transfers or not. I think the policymakers should see it as private transfers. They should be used, but we should make sure that the decisions on which remittances are used are made on informed decisions and without infringements on any types of opening on economic opportunities, for instance, or on investments in social outputs such as education or health. Very last point. Again, going back to this discussion on how women might be good vectors and empowered vectors for development. When they're in host countries, for instance, we find that return migration is lower, and this goes back to this discussion on whether informal norms are infringing on their capacity to engage back in their home country. But it's interesting also to think, and this is maybe a question for the panel. I think it's interesting, and I haven't seen any studies on this. It'd be interesting to see how much women actually engage through diasporic development organizations in their host countries for development in their home countries, vis-a-vis how men might engage with those same diasporic agendas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe due to time constraint, maybe you are going to have two. I'll give and then I'll close. I just would like to have maybe three more, but please be brief. Recognize for a while two ladies there, and then the first one. Please. Two ladies in the middle and the gentleman here on the right side.
Bonjour tout le monde, Wafa Gonzalez de l'association Maroc Entrepreneurs qui se situe à Paris. Moi, ma question, ou mon observation plutôt, se porte sur l'aide au retour des migrants dans le pays d'origine. Je parle particulièrement pour la France parce que je sais qu'elle existe, certainement qu'elle existe aussi dans d'autres pays européens. Donc un aide au retour, une somme forfaitaire qui est attribuée aux migrants qui est en situation irrégulière afin de l'inciter ou le motiver ou encore l'aider à retourner donc dans son pays d'origine dans le cadre d'une réinsertion professionnelle ou une création d'entreprise. Elle est également ouverte aux personnes qui sont en situation régulière dans le pays d'accueil. L'aide au retour, on parle donc inclut le non-retour, c'est-à-dire donc on vous donne une somme pour vous aider à rentrer, mais vous ne revenez pas. Est-ce qu'il ne faudrait pas repenser pour les personnes qui sont en situation régulière et qui veulent tenter le retour au pays d'origine, de les protéger en cas d'échec, pour éviter que ce soit en cas d'échec, donc qu'il y ait un drame ou alors qu'ils redeviennent des migrants et retentent leur chance de repasser de l'autre côté, de repasser de façon irrégulière dans le pays dans lequel ils résidaient auparavant. Donc est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une protection à laquelle il faudrait réfléchir sur ça, du moins pour les personnes qui étaient en situation irrégulière pour éviter des drames et donc voilà, de se retrouver face à une case départ, c'est-à-dire donc un migrant en situation régulière dans un pays d'accueil. Voilà, merci.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Sibelle Andrade. Je suis dans une fondation du ministère de l'Éducation du Brésil. On sait qu'il y a un point que c'est très important pour les femmes migrantes, c'est le réseau d'accueil dans les pays. Le réseau gouvernemental, privé, des initiatives privées, religieux, etc. Est-ce que vous avez pris en compte ces réseaux d'accueil, l'impact de ces réseaux d'accueil sur les femmes migrantes? C'est-à-dire, est-ce qu'il y a des études spécifiques, des chiffres, des statistiques à ces sujets? Est-ce que vous avez fait cette corrélation? Voilà. Merci.
Thank you, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Behzad Newberry. I'm the Deputy Representative of UNICEF in Morocco, the United Nations Children's Fund. I wanted to just quickly build upon the point from the colleague from Moldova on the special needs of children and where they fit into this discussion. Children, of course, have special and unique vulnerabilities and needs. They should, for example, never be detained, no matter what the situation is. If they're moving with their family, they should absolutely be kept with their family. And they, even more than their adult counterparts, need access to services, especially education. I don't think this is, we have the time to unpack all of these things, but what I wanted to mention is that the GFMD is very much aware of this and is planning, with support of UNICEF, to have a conference similar to this one, specifically on the needs of children on the move, in which we will attempt to unpack these needs and how we can, in a practical manner, respond to these. And that's planned for later on this year. So I wanted to take this chance to highlight that and encourage colleagues to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know there are some colleagues who would like to have been raising their hands. But I do apologize because I know that we have to stop around 12:30, so we still have some more time to give the floor to others, the panel, so I do apologize for that. So I would like now to give back the floor to distinguished panelists, but I would like to reverse. Now I would like to give the floor first to Mr. Ayman Saidi. Ayman Saidi, please, if there is any response or any more further clarification from your side.
Thank you for all the comments and the questions. I'm just going to go over some of them, talking about the first one. The women and girls do live the migration differently than men, and thank you for bringing up all the kind of human rights violations that they experience on their migration routes, exploitation, domestic abuse, prostitution you mentioned, and the GFMD must look more closely at all these different forms of violence that affect women on their migratory routes. We need to try and push for more national, regional, international partnerships and initiatives on migration and development in order to face these challenges in the upcoming years. Mainstreaming migration into development strategies is a way to tackle this issue. Improve our gender-sensitive migration management, the capacity development for women, migrant workers, organizations, in order to develop their capacities for them to become, and joining the point of that was made earlier, so that they can become agents of the economy and contribute to the global economy. I had a few more. Talk about children, but my colleague from UNICEF mentioned that, and we're looking forward to the similar conference that will be organized. Yeah, I think that's all for me for now. I had something else about the l'aide au retour. I think we do work on that. I wanted to give maybe the chance to my colleagues from IOM who are possibly somewhere in the room to talk about that, because I know that they work on this issue in Morocco, so maybe we can connect with them either now if they're in the room or later on. Thank you.
Thank you, but let me give the floor first, continue to give, and afterward then we are going to give your colleague if there is here in the room. So please, I give the floor to Dr. Ayman Jari.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to comment on 3 issues raised in the very rich discussion. The first thing is remittances by my colleague, Professor Hamdouche, and the other one is about data raised by our colleague from OECD. He's not here. I don't know where did he go, but maybe he's coming again. The third thing, which is very important actually in migration studies, and it's under research, it is the migration networks, the issue raised by our Brazilian colleague. First of all, with respect to remittances, Bashir, you know, yeah, of course, that these are private funds and they go to the families. But imagine Morocco without $8 billion every year. Okay. Imagine Egypt without $20 billion every year. So despite the fact that they are private money and you have limited mechanisms to direct them to investment, though they match basic needs for the families. So we highly appreciate them. We should make for increasing the remittances. And actually one of the part of the SDGs deals with this, as you mentioned, and the target is to reduce the cost of remittances to less than 3 by 2030. So the remittances still be very important. The other thing also that we undercount the money spent for directed or devoted to education and health. And I believe that education and health is the utmost investment compared to the economic investment, because you investment in your population. So this is about remittances. About data, I wish that our colleague of the OECD be here. The problem with for us as data consumers, as researchers, and also for the politicians and state actors, the problem with data that we usually receive data from outside, that we usually wait for the data for the United Nations. We usually wait for the data from the IOM data center, in addition, of course, to the OECD. So these are the 3 main producers of international data. Everyone has its own shortage. So with respect to the UN just publishes every 2 years the stock. So they're just a still image. The OECD is more richer than the UN, of course, but it covers only the OECD countries. So their data doesn't cover the whole universe. IOM data is about, yes, it's more lively. It's about the movements, like the movements of the mixed migration in the Mediterranean and so on, but they don't also cover the overall aspects of specific phenomena. So the problem with data should be resolved first by producing and making available national data. Because simply the IOM data, OECD data, and the UN data are based on national data. So if you don't produce and share national data, there will be a shortage in data. Migration networks actually is a very important term in migration. It's very important in stimulating and keeping the migration streams from one state to the other, from one region to the other, and actually they understudied. So I recommend that we push forward the studies of migration networks to know a sort of a lively picture of migration rather than the still image that is provided by the stock data. Thank you.
that's where we left. Oh, thanks. You know, I think part of the discussion around data is important to not only think about making sure we have, as I've said, sex disaggregated data, but one of the issues is that when we look at the counts, when we're talking about what our colleague from the OECD was talking about in terms of flows, part of this tells a story. It tells a story of gender inequality, of gender discrimination, where women can't access migration pathways, regular migration pathways, which then forces them to have to choose alternative routes that are more likely to encounter more informal routes, more likely to encounter violence, more likely to lead them into more precarious employment. And so I think part of this story is thinking about linking all of these areas, is that when we're thinking about data, we're not just thinking about measuring the numbers to be able to prioritize certain areas over others. I think it tells us where there are gaps. And when we think about access to pathways, I mean, I think, you know, often what ends up happening is when there are situations of violence or situations of exploitation, a pathway is then closed, right, in the form of a migration ban or in the form of a way to address the exploitation by simply just not allowing women to move in those categories. And that's not a solution either. And I think to go back to some of the other questions, I mean, I think it's clear that gender influences all stages of migration, pre-migration, everything from the opportunities to move, during migration, everything from access to labor rights, access to health and social protection. And here I'd like to raise the importance of access to sexual and reproductive health. And these issues need our attention if we're going to be able to think about the way in which human rights, in fact, are a big part of the ability for us to realize any kind of development benefits from migration. And to come to the point of remittances, I'd raised it mostly just to kind of point to the way in which it's very gendered, not to, for example, endorse that, you know, we need to have private remittance transfers as the primary way of propping up development. No, I think what matters, though, is to the point of making sure that when women are engaged in migration and engaged in remittance sending or receiving, that they don't face barriers in terms of accessing those remittances or utilizing those, whether it's difficulties in banking, property, or investment, and that we think about proactive strategies that help invest those or match, such as matching funds and initiatives that can help convert those remittances into much more than just sort of the cycles of dependency that we're concerned about around remittances. I would add also that when we think about all the different sort of challenges that are that women encounter in migration, a big thing that we need to ensure, or that we want to make sure we ensure, is that there's access to justice at every stage in pre-migration, in transit, in a country of destination, so that when there is a situation where there's a failed migration, one of the comments from the floor, or experience of exploitation and abuse, the option isn't only to return, right? The option is to engage, the option is to protect and be able to protect your own rights, and the option is to be able to have other opportunities to be able to fulfill potential, both economic and social.
Thank you very much.
Just very quickly, thank you very much for the audience comments, very relevant. And just to add on what my colleagues were saying about the data and the relevance to data, that's why I was also mentioning about the extended migration profile, which is collecting this data at national level via our embassies abroad, and also analyzing and giving good inputs for the national policies. On the remittances, that was previously addressed in the slides that I was mentioning, it was not the percentage to the remittances, it was it was the example of a project that mostly it's the support of the government and helping the migrants that are coming back in the country, how they can engage in developing a small business in the country, and how they can benefit. It's basically a win-win situation. They're benefiting and they also bring this qualification from abroad. And on the point mentioned about the development and how the development can impact and can help basically our countries, I think it's relevant to mention diaspora experience, and we have also relevant projects conducted within the Mobility Partnership. Even recently the Diaspora Engagement Hub, which is also giving the possibilities to diaspora to bring very different initiatives, projects as well, and as well, like by this helping our country to develop, but also making their voice to be heard at national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't intend to wrap up because later on I'm going to report back to the plenary on the summary of what have been stated, what have been a lot of things has been informed, shared with us, so I will inform later on the salient points of it. What left for me is, on behalf of all of us here, I would like to thank the four prominent panelists for their sharing with us today, and I think they did a big applause for that. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, I wish to express my appreciation for your constructive engagement, for your participation, and I do apologize. Some of you might have not yet getting any chance. Maybe after we dismiss this meeting, you can talk with all the panelists. Thank you very much once again, and good afternoon.